There is a renewed push for the Seattle City Council to set up safe injection sites, places where people can use drugs while under medical supervision.
Under a new proposal, advocate Jesse Rollins with the Public Defenders Association says the sites would be set up at existing social service and healthcare facilities.
Penalizing substance use disorder isn't going to reduce harm. What does reduce harm is making people safer and healthier.
The council budget proposal would use the $1.4 million set aside for the sites to partner with public health on the new model.
Cairo Radio's Hannah Scott reporting there. 2 men are being held on $500,000 bail each for the brutal beating of a black man that King County prosecutors are calling a hate crime. Cairo 7 TV's Michael Spears reports from Federal Way.
The beating was so loud, one 911 caller heard it from inside his home, along with the N-word being shouted repeatedly. Police said the 2 suspects were covered in the victim's blood and stopped nearby following the attack after blowing through a stop sign. Police say once in custody, one of the suspects said, "I beat his expletive because he was an N-word."
The victim had to be hospitalized, but is expected to recover. COVID-19 cases are heading to levels not seen since early August.
We really have to, over the next coming months, really double down on wearing our face covering, washing our hands, not having gatherings.
Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkin says hospitals are now around 80% capacity. Boeing plans to cut about 31,000 jobs worldwide by the end of next year. Aviation analyst Scott Hamilton says it's clear why.
Passengers aren't flying the airlines, and the airlines aren't ordering airplanes, and the airlines don't want to take delivery of airplanes. It all revolves around the pandemic.
Boeing today reported $466 million in losses in the third quarter. The logging ban in Alaska's Tongass National Forest has been lifted. The U.S. Department of Agriculture is reversing a rule put in place in 2001 to help preserve the rainforest, one of the biggest in the world. Your Cairo Radio forecast calls for lows tonight around 50, clouds to sunshine tomorrow with highs in the upper 50s. It's 56 in downtown Seattle. I'm Heather Moss.
For breaking news, highlights, podcasts, and more, download the Cairo Radio app. Cairo Radio, here for what's next.
Got it. All right, here we go. This is Tom and Curly Show. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And Joey the Garbage Man, thanks so much for sending me a picture of yourself with extra shirt on, standing in front of a great big truck, drinking a beer with shorts and cowboy boots on. Totally, completely unnecessary. I don't know why it came to me.
Is there a big Trump pant sign behind him?
You don't need to have that comment. It's all right there for you now. Standing in front of a giant, jacked-up pickup truck with a beer, and you have an American flag vest on with no shirt underneath, shorts and American flag cowboy boots, you're not going for Harris Biden, right? Huh? I hate to make a sweeping generalization there, Tom, but I think that's what the case is.
We didn't get to, Joey had a clever, response yesterday. We didn't get to it in the letters, but he said, hey, those liberals better be careful because if Trump wins, he might decide to expand the court himself.
Through that. Hey, there's Felix. Felix is coming in the door. Hi, Felix. Can you hear my feet making the sound effects on the plywood board here as I walk into the studio?
Oh.
Here, let me drop my glass and turn on my wind machine.
Old-timey time.
Right. Theater of the mindless. Theater of the mindless. That is radio, and that is what they're trying to do with some local theater. There's a piece from Crosscut, and we saw this story, and we thought, oh, this is right up Felix's alley. Did you get a chance to read it? It basically says that theater is going to try, because they can't do it in front of people because of the whole COVID scare, that they're going to be able to allow you to enjoy theater-like productions over this thing called radio.
Wow, think of that, a story being told with sound and no pictures. Who could have thought of such a crazy idea? You know, we've been doing this since the year 2000 at Little Seattle Radio Theater, which, John, you've been a part of, I think, since 2002.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, you ran away from it many years ago, and I forced you to do a bunch of painful accents.
That's right.
It's sort of like it's sort of exciting and frustrating to see all these theaters finally coming around to doing audio drama. One thing I'll point out, though, these groups, I think, are sane, and they're recording their shows and then putting them online for people to listen to at their leisure. What we're attempting tomorrow night is this technological disaster where several of the cast are going to be on Zoom from their homes. I'm going to be down there at the studio. We're going to have a couple people on microphones. We'll have, someone in a room with a piece of plywood and a pair of old shoes. I would suggest people tune in tomorrow night at 8 o'clock just to hear like the Titanic-like proportions of an audio disaster.
And
I'm really excited.
You've always, in the productions that I was in with you, you always stressed the value of doing something live. That's why you liked it in the old days, at least up until this year. You did it in front of an audience, and you had, everyone could watch it if they wanted to, and then it would be broadcast live over the radio. And you thought that somehow made it a more, I don't know, why is that so valuable to you? Because all of these great theater productions that are being done so far, and there's a whole list, and we should probably credit them at the end of this segment, they're all recorded, they're all pre-recorded, they're set up, they're designed for, as in a podcast. What is the value for you of doing something live when so many things might go wrong?
Let me answer your question with a question, Tom. Have you ever heard of someone named Shakespeare?
Yes.
How many podcasts did Shakespeare do?
But here's the thing. Shakespeare did have visuals. They did have people you could have people throw tomatoes from the pit there and all that.
It's why, I love live radio. The fact we're having this conversation right now, and at least a few dozen people are listening in from all around the Puget Sound region. That's amazing. And I've noticed, even in the last couple of weeks, my family and I have been watching so much live TV. We've been watching Saturday Night Live, 8:30 p.m. Pacific broadcast on Channel 5, watch the Seahawks game, watch the debates. It wasn't live, but we watched 60 Minutes at 7 o'clock Sunday night. There's something about knowing that you're sitting there watching or listening to something that other people who you know in your community are doing at the same time that ties you together. It makes you feel like you're part of some community. You can't really put a value on that, but it's just cool knowing that if this is live, it's going on now. We might make terrible mistakes. Chris Sullivan might flub up his lines. Dave Ross might do something. Who knows? But the fact that anything could go wrong, and the fact people are there kind of with us, experiencing it live, that's pretty darn magical in the theater and on the radio. This whole Zoom thing, it's not magic. It's terrifying. The technical parts here are giving me kind of nightmares the last couple nights. So, it's a story about, it's set in the 1940s in Seattle. It's got spooky sound effects and sort of spooky music and everything. And it's all about just sort of, kind of pausing reality for an hour and giving people some kind of a distraction that hopefully has some kind of satisfaction to it.
And why isn't John Curley in this year's production?
Oh, I think he said, I have an auction. I have to do one of my auctions. I don't think he even has one.
That wasn't it. Why don't you tell everybody why?
What?
Huh? Tell everybody why I didn't want to be in the show there, Dennis.
Well, I was told. No, one of your people.
Wow.
One of your people reached out to me and told me that you couldn't.
I did.
You didn't give me the personal call.
I gave it to you.
No.
I'm going to read your response on the air. You want to talk about something uncomfortable happening right away on the air live while people are sitting around.
Wait, let me get my sound effects. I got a phone call. Ring.
No, it is.
No, we're going to miss you terribly.
Your love for it and the fact that people would show up at the town hall, which was always amazing to me. We'd pull the curtain back and look out there and like, oh my gosh, it's a full house.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it was amazing, which I always thought that the one thing that we did that was a little different than what Garrison Keillor did when he used to do Prairie Home Companion was he would stand up in front of the audience like about 30 seconds before, and he'd say, well, we're about to get started, and we're waiting for New York, because New York thinks it's the center of the world, and once we get started, hope you enjoy the show. And then he would, they're like, 5 seconds, we're 5 away. Thanks for coming, everybody.
I still have time to sexually harass a few people before we get started.
The lady in the front row with the big boobs, come on up. No, he would then, when the show would start, he would turn upstage or 3/4 or 2/3 from the audience and perform everything either sideways or upstage. And I asked him about it, and he told me, because I don't want the audience to sit in front of us to laugh at something we are doing in a visual manner, because the people sitting at home would be left with a feeling of like, well, what's so funny? He said the audience at home was more important than the audience there in front. And I found that often I was playing to the audience in front, and I'm like, yeah, I'm getting a laugh, this is easy. But for the people at home, like, why is that funny?
Well, I think we had to explain when you were doing your Cary Grant impersonation, you had to rock your head back and forth sideways in order to be able to do the voice properly. There was another year where I think it was Jim Dever dropped his script and it wasn't stapled and the pages weren't numbered and he was like on all fours trying to collect the piece of paper together.
And I kicked him. No, I looked like I had I was having an attack or something like that. When Jim explain it to the audience.
Well, by the way, in addition to tomorrow night's spectacular, if for no other reason, watching a car crash has its appeal too.
Listening to a car crash.
Listening, that's right. So, Book It Theater, Seattle Shakespeare, Sound Theater, Acts, A Christmas Carol, Seattle Public Theater, and Fifth Avenue are all doing productions. They're putting together productions that you'll be able to hear purely audio. They're doing them now. So I would recommend everybody kind of getting into that thing and seeing if radio really does have something over the other mediums, because right now it's kind of like the poor stepchild of everybody, and I think it would be interesting to see, with all these theatrical minds behind it, if they can really sell a story 100 years after its heyday.
And what time's your start, Felix?
8 o'clock. Ooh, it's getting kind of windy in here. I thought that was your wind machine. I didn't realize it was a car crash. Oh, wow.
I think I can see that.
Does a hubcap roll away by itself at the end? A single hubcap roll? Get out of here. All right, 2 o'clock, right? 8 o'clock. Walk the dark, walk the dark.
One night, it's in the big sea beach. She was back on Felix the cat. The wonderful, wonderful cat.
I do give him a lot of credit, and it takes 3 years off his life every time we do one of those shows.
I know.
He's like, okay, so the rehearsal was good. A couple of things we need to work on. We're like, let's do the show. All right, stop doing that. The interview, there will be the SmackDown on cable news. Did you get a chance to listen to this thing, Tom? This is a chance for people just to scream and yell at each other on CNN, that you bring somebody on. Just a quick background. Having friends that worked in Washington, D.C. for big shows, there is normally it falls to the least competent person. Can you book somebody for this segment? You have a list of 10 people you go to. You call them and you pre-interview them and you ask them to have an opinion about a particular sort of political thing that's happening. The person says yes, 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 and then they give outrageous responses over the phone or via the email. And then they say, okay, great, can you come on and do that? So it's pre-arranged. It's almost like a wrestling match that you know that the person's going to say something crazy. And you put them on the air, and then you let the anchor, host, reporter, journalist, pundit ask the questions if the person says something nuts.
That's how Jason gets on so much,
That's it.
Okay, so in this article is about, there's a new tendency that's cropped up this past year where journalists act fed up. When you do an interview with somebody, you try to ask, persistent questions so they're getting off the topic. But now there's a point at which a lot of journalists are deciding, to heck with this. If you're not going to answer the question, we're just going to end the interview. It always used to be the person that was being interviewed who would walk off the set, sort of like how President Trump dealt with Leslie Stahl recently. But that's now the script has been flipped a little bit, and now we have some audio.
The average American in 2017.
This is Poppy Harrell interviewing Trump campaign spokesperson. This is Brian Morgenstern.
Teen Brian paid $12,199 in federal income taxes. Why does the president believe that he owes 16 times less?
The president and his attorney have stated he paid millions of dollars in taxes.
I have not stated. I'm talking about federal income taxes. You are very right. You work with folks from the Treasury. You know there's a difference.
So are you, Poppy, and that's why you should be asking, where are the taxes on Hunter's $3.5 million from Russia? Where are the taxes on his $1 billion from China? The president's paid tens of millions of dollars in
the
taxes.
President's spokesman about someone who is not germane to this conversation, who is not running for president.
All righty. And then what happens? Does he just storm off, or does she get rid of him? Is that what normally occurs, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I think that she ended up just ending the interview because he wouldn't answer her questions.
Yeah, Wolf went back and forth with Nancy Pelosi. Is this where she says, why are you reading from the Republican,
As we say,
know them. We represent them.
Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, as they say.
It is nowhere near perfect.
Madam Speaker.
Always the case, but we're not even close to the good.
All right, let's see what...
We're talking about the $2 trillion additional spending.
It happens because every day is critically important. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for your sensitivity to our constituents' needs.
I am sensitive to them because I see them on the street begging for food, begging for money.
Wow, Wolf.
Madam Speaker, thank you so much.
That's what the federal government should be doing.
We feed them. We feed them.
We'll continue this conversation down the road for sure. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Wow, look at those two. She's had a couple of running arounds with Wolf recently. MSNBC's Hallie Jackson pressing Hogan Gidley? Yeah, okay.
Listen, I received a ballot just the other day in my apartment from someone who hasn't lived there in 10
This is informative.
Evidence of voter fraud.
Your local markets, NBC affiliates, are reporting on this in all types of...
FBI director himself, specifically within the last 12 hours, said on national television across every network that there is no evidence of widespread voter fraud. Somebody who's a part of the Trump administration's own intelligence expert field, Hogan. Does the president have confidence in his FBI director? Yes or no?
The president has confidence that the American people want a free and fair election. Barack Obama and Joe Biden, who knew Russia was going to interfere, did nothing.
I guess
this
there's no answer to that question.
The whole of government approach.
We'll leave it there.
We'll leave it there, yeah. We got to get rid of you kind of thing. But listen, you have to generate news. You got 24 hours. You got to fill it up in between diaper commercials. So, that's what you get.
The suggestion, though, is that when you have somebody speaking for somebody, if they're not going to answer the question, they're basically there just to throw out more, campaign points, talking points, then the interview is no longer there. I think this is probably a good move. It can obviously be abused, but too many times we just have spokesmen. And this, I think it happens more with Trump than with other administrations, but it happens on both sides, where you always are spinning, the best thing. If you're way off topic, if it's this whataboutism, which has taken over a lot of public spokespeople's sort of agenda, then I think it probably is useful just to say, okay, if you don't want to talk about it, you don't want to talk about it.
I'm surprised that people go on those shows. I mean, you know what's coming. First of all, CNN's position as far as the Trump administration. So these people guess, I'm going to get on and just bulldoze through your question and say what I want to say. Well, the people that are listening to CNN, they already know the bias of CNN. They know they hate Trump. It's not like they're CNN, not like Trump. I mean, there's people that are stuck in airports or on treadmills in hotels that can't change the channel. But most of the CNN viewers know that, they're not Trump guys. And Trump guys watch Fox, CNN people, MSNBC people. I mean, that's all Biden stuff.
Well, okay, so I don't think you watch as much of it as I do, because I think there are a lot of interviews where people are on the opposite side. Even on Fox, I would say, occasionally they get people like from the Obama administration defending Obama's economics, and sometimes things can be said that are informational. Most of CNN and most of MSNBC is not what we're just, the clips that we're playing. The challenge is that when somebody actually is on, most people like to be on Sunday shows. Most of those I don't think were Sunday shows, but Sunday shows because they get high ratings and they want to get their spin on, and that's why it takes it. That's why I love Chris Wallace's show. Chris Wallace has Republicans and Democrats, and even though he's on Fox, he really grills both of them. I learn things from them if they stay on topic.
Yeah. Well, what they do is they do the Sunday shows because they want the one or two pull-out lines from the quotes that then go on Twitter or on Mediaite or some other place. Yes. And then it continues to sort of maybe dominate the news cycle Monday, Tuesday. It's all about dominating the news cycle, or at least trying to wrap up the news cycle that took place during the week.
Yes.
You now have to sort of clean up the carnage on a Sunday, right?
But that's where we got the alternative facts from Kellyanne Conway for the first time. That was on a Sunday show, I think.
We're watching the drive right now on North 95 still be pretty heavy as we get out of Mount Lake Terrace into parts of South Everett, and we're